Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before we get into it with our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Muscle Marilyn on the podcast. She's coming to us all the way from Las Vegas, where, she's on here to share her health and fitness journey and just discuss all things health and fitness. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Marilyn, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. So cool of you to reach out.
Well, I got to start out first off. Muscle Marilyn, how did that all come to be?
I've been doing the blonde hair for a long time, and then I've been seriously lifting for about 3 years now. And someone kind of mentioned it to me that I gave off some Marilyn Monroe vibes. I have a little mole here, even, which is similar and is really a mole on my face. And then I also saw some vintage photos of Marilyn doing some very light dumbbell bench press in some jeans and a pointy bra. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And so I just made that connection and just started going by that. And it's worked.
I will say it hasn't. I mean, you said 3 years ago you really started lifting. What got you into working out?
I've been an athlete for really my whole life. So I kind of started when I was about 4 years old doing gymnastics and dance. My grandma got me into that. So I just had a good foundation. It wasn't particularly something that I loved to do, but I did it for about probably 10 years as a kid and dancing on stage and just, that when you start with that good foundation, it's easy to just build from there. Then in middle school, high school, I joined the cross country team and track in high school. But middle school, we could do a little bit of track as well. I went to a super tiny school in Iowa, so there's not a lot going on there. But we did have some running and a lot of trail running. So I kind of just got into that. And so I just had that really lean kind of runner body for a long time. And then in college, I didn't do as much sports. I actually majored in music, so I just kind of focused on that. But I kept running in. I always kind of was running, and I would do little 5K races here and there. And then after college, I just kept in with that. So that was my main source of exercise. And then so I've literally been running now for 15 years or something like that. Then got into yoga and started pairing that as well. Then saw my abs for the first time and I was like, oh, okay, that's what that looks like. And then when COVID hit and things got really weird, obviously for everyone, I was just bored. And so I kept my running up, but I got some dumbbells and I just was doing stuff in my house. And then as soon as stuff started lightly opening up, I was like, I'm just going to join the gym and see what happens. Literally, it was just that. I just wanted to I kept evolving my interest in sports and fitness, and I didn't really know what was going to happen when I started lifting weights. I knew people that were powerlifting and Olympic lifting and everything in between, and bodybuilding, of course, but I wasn't specifically thinking to do bodybuilding when I started. I just wanted to add some muscle, and I really didn't know anything at all. But I just started and I just really enjoyed it, and it just literally has snowballed from there. I can't imagine not doing this at this point.
Well, now I feel bad for you telling me that you're from Iowa. Now I'm like, oh God, that's just really depressing right there. So I mean, now you got my sympathy, at least on that part of this aspect. But I mean, you're one of the few cases where you actually started working out during COVID, where most people went the complete opposite way. So I like to hear that. I like to see that there was at least a little bit of a difference on that, at least during COVID. But when you working started, like you said, you had really no idea what this whole lifestyle was about. What to you was the most surprising thing that you found out as you were getting into this?
Well, there's been a lot of evolution in my own self, my spiritual self, over this period of time. When I started with my first coach, which was just about 2 months after kind of like starting in the gym, work playing around with stuff. I was drinking heavily at that point in my life, and I had been up until that point, but kind of I would, I had all these nice little excuses, nice little packages that I made up in my head about why it was okay. And so that getting my first bodybuilding plan from him, which obviously included nutrition as well, and it did not include alcohol. And it was, I know it's like very like, well, duh, of course it wouldn't, but I just like stopped because I'm like, oh well, it's not in the plan, and I've like committed. I'm making this big change. I've committed to the plan. So that was like the first thing that really changed, and I guess it surprised. It didn't. Looking back, when I think about like the amount of time that I spent um, staying up late or socializing into the wee hours, and even though it didn't like I'm lucky that it didn't do more damage to me health wise, but just like how much did that hold me back in life by not getting enough sleep, by saying yes to too many things. And so that was kind of the first thing. And then as it has evolved and realizing like, you know, my relationship with food, for example, has really changed. And how much, even during that time, leading up into all this, if I would feel emotional or upset or sad or something, I might, divulge into some more food or things like that. So now I have to really consider that and like, okay, well, am I eating too much because it's an emotional thing or am I actually hungry? And so there's like these other battles that I consider and am constantly working through because it forces you to because you have a greater goal, right? And so it's like, well, does it line with my greater goal? Well, sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I'm better at it and sometimes I'm not. So it's just this constant progression, and the community that's here, that I've gotten in with bodybuilding, from my coaches, from different, especially women who are also bodybuilding that I've connected with that I can reach out to. It's like far beyond what I could have ever imagined when I stepped into all this.
And what was your friends and family's reaction like when you first unveiled them? Like, hey, I'm going to give this a try.
My friends are quite supportive. My family is a little less supportive, because I did have a really troublesome prep this year, and I did pull out of my prep for my bodybuilding show this year because of health concerns. So they have that feeling about it. Well, they're worried that some aspects of it is not healthy, and they're right. There are plenty of aspects to this sport that are not healthy, and so it's more a matter of taking a step back. I've been going through a health phase for quite a period of time, making sure my health markers are in check, doing blood work, going over things with my coach, and we have another higher level coach that we work with. And so, you know, they just want to see me healthy and strong and going after everything. So it's supportive, but with that, with that caveat there of like, well, are you really healthy? Are you making sure things are okay? The answer is yes, but it's hard to fully explain that to the people that are close to you.
Well, especially if someone who doesn't do the sport or isn't that familiar with the sport, when they see you that dieted down and see like how much you're limiting yourself, it is hard for someone from the outside to be like, oh, this is healthy. When from the outside perspective, without any knowledge, it'd be like, oh, this is one of the most unhealthy things I've ever seen in my entire life. And you're just like, no, there's a reason to it. There's a purpose to it. So that's one thing that whenever I ask that question, I get that response a lot too. It's, normally it takes a few years for the family to really get into, what goes into the sport. But I also love talk genetics on this podcast. Everyone always has that one body part that really, really takes off, that they don't have to train as much. And then they have that one body part that just drags behind. What's been one body part that really took off for you? And what's been one body part that you've just had to drag behind?
Okay, so like I have like the best calf genetics.
God damn it.
Like I just don't have to do anything for them. They're massive. I attribute that to years though of actually running, because you do create, especially when you're going uphill doing stairs, that type of running with your body weight on top, you are creating hypertrophy. So it does make a lot of sense that that body part has grown, just because I've literally been working on it even without thinking for so many years. My delts are pretty good too. I really don't have to do much to get those to pop. Um, as for what is lagging for me, definitely my glutes. I really struggle there. They did grow quite a lot this year, but this is a sport that takes a long time. And I think that's what one thing that people kind of don't necessarily understand. I certainly didn't when I started. I just didn't really realize the layers to it and the length of time that it will really take. So once you're kind of in it and once you really realize, like, okay, I've only really been doing this for 3 years, like, I'm a baby in it, it's fine. Like, the people that I look up to have been doing it for 10. It will take that long. And but there's some sort of, like, actually now to me, actually a comfort in that, because it means that I can slow down and really just take the time. Like, it really is a journey that I want to just be on for my lifetime.
Oh, 100% it's a marathon. So many people do not understand that, and then they find out the hard way. But yeah, this is something that, especially as the older you get, usually the more impressive, the physique gets and all that stuff. But I just want to throw this out of the way because I've said this a billion times, but I'm 6'3", my calves, number one worst genetic body part of all time. So the moment you said that, I almost wanted to hang up right now and just be like, okay, we're done talking here because this is absolutely ridiculous. I am the guy that I could inject pure muscle into my calves and they wouldn't even grow. It's just, it's never ending the torture here. So thank you for bringing that up, Marilyn. I'll just tell you that. Thank you for reliving that whole thing. Now I'm gonna have to look at my calves tonight when I'm taking a shower or something like that and be like, God damn it, just really, really embarrassed. No, but it's, again, that's why I love asking that question, because everyone's body is built differently. Unfortunately, you got some people like me that really struggle with that, but then you got other people like you who struggle with glutes, which, by the way, is like the number one thing for women. So it's not something that's, that is definitely, if I were to do a poll, that's the number one thing. But nutrition is just something that is not talked about as much as it should be with this sport. What has that journey been like for you? Because it's always ever evolving. And like I told you, that's one of the reasons why I never could compete myself. That's probably the biggest reason I think why some people aren't able to step on that stage, because it is so underappreciated for people that are outside the sport, that once you get into it and you realize it is so much more and it takes up such a huge amount of what you put into that package.
Yeah, I mean, I do struggle with it, and from what I have heard from my other friends and acquaintances in this sport, we all do. Um, I do think when you're in that prep mindset, you could look at it as almost easier to stay on the path because you know where the end goal is. Like, if you're 12, 16, 20 weeks, whatever your prep length is, you can kind of um connect with that, and, like, you're like, okay, I just got to get through this day of it. And there are parts of the journey that are harder than others. There are days where you're on a lot lower food than maybe a different day. If you've got a great coach, they can see how your body and your mental state is evolving or unraveling potentially, and give you refeeds to help with that process. In the off season where I'm at right now, it's more of it's much easier to not do it right. It's much easier because, well, when am I going to compete again? Maybe late next year. Okay, well, no one's seeing me eat this. And I do have those kind of little come to Jesus moments. Do I really need this? Is it really going to help me? And so, like, thankfully, like, I have like 2 meals a week where I can kind of have something fun, and then my calories are not that low. Whereas, because now we're wanting to make sure that I'm healthy, wanting to make sure that my blood work is good, and so for that, it's easier, but still a challenge because I still want to have fun and I want to eat. I'm a little fat kid at heart. I like to eat my cake and cookies, but we can place those into we could use that better, right? Like I don't just eat that every day. I can have it maybe one day a week, maybe one little time. And um if I think of it like that, it makes it easier. And then for like the general public, like really when I start to think about that 80-20 rule, like that really does make a lot of sense. If you're like 80% on, that's with training, sleep, diet, everything, like think about what that does for a very long period of time. If you're that on, like you're far worlds above what the general population is. And ultimately, like that's what I want. Like I want to get old and be strong. I want to get old and be able to cross the street without a walker. Like that is truly the goal for me. Like when it comes down to it, is the longevity. So I try to really consider that with my nutrition. Like, I know that it's about consistent days and consistent meals and doing this over the long haul. Because if I eat cookies every single day, that adds up. It just adds up. So I want the positive, good nutrition to add up longer than the bad nutrition. If we could all think of it like that, I think um we'd be better off. But it's difficult. It's so nutrition is so emotional for so many people.
Oh my God, I mean, I knew that before, but even doing this podcast, good God, that really magnified my viewpoint of all this. But you mentioned before that you weren't able to compete or you pulled out this year. What was that like? Because I know how hard you guys work, especially in your preps, and just how much it takes to step on stage. To not be able to do that, how did you deal with that mentally?
Um, it was a struggle. Thankfully I had some people who were really supportive, and I knew in my gut that things were not right. I was on quite a lot of pharmaceuticals, and my food was very low, which is part of the process, but also to go back to the fact that I've only been doing this for 3 years. There are layers to this. And a lot of what was happening was just, frankly, too much for my body, and we didn't need to do that. But there was still like a very big level of sort of guilt and shame around it because I looked so good and I worked so hard. So to pull out of something feels, it's hard to not feel like you failed. Even though if I would have kept going, something worse was like we were in process of it going very awry. Um, at that time, there was actually another bodybuilder who I didn't know personally, but that actually did die at that moment, right around that moment. And so when I saw that, I think I had made the decision to pull out of my prep with the help of a couple people who are big supporters of me and really understand what's going on. And I think it was about 2 days later that this other person passed away. And so it kind of gave me some confirmation even more that I made the right choice because we really don't know what's going on internally. But our intuition is telling us. And so I knew that things were not working. And so thankfully I had support. And so that's why we've been in such a long health phase, which I just kind of have been getting out of about 4 weeks ago. And we're kind of pushing training, pushing food again. And I'm feeling more like myself than I ever have. But I still struggle with it. But I also will say that there were people that like pulled out of their Olympia prep this year, for example, and seeing people even at that high level have to do that, even more confirmed in me that what I did was the right choice for me. And there will always be another show, and I will compete again, but when I'm properly and all the way ready. And like I said, this is a long marathon, a long journey, and the stage is always there. So right, we just keep working on ourselves, keep getting better, stronger, bigger, faster, all that stuff.
Well, I appreciate you said it like that because so many times I've talked to some people who do still continue down the path and then bad things happen to them. So I'm grateful that you were able to catch that and, find ways because yeah, this is a trial and error lifestyle. I mean, you're going to fail, it's just all about seeing what works best for you and trying to, maintain it. But let's be honest, you're not the average looking woman. If you were to go out in public dressed the way you are right now, you are going to draw people's attention just because when it's just human nature when they see something that's not the normal, just be like, oh, wow, that's interesting. What has that been like for you? And has it gotten easier as you've done more and more years of this lifestyle? Or is it still where you're just like, okay, this is still weird, like how I'm drawing some people's attention?
I so one reason I moved from Seattle to Las Vegas is because I um felt a little bit isolated in Seattle. There's a s- a smaller bodybuilding population, especially women, is even smaller, and it's just not really the culture there for it. And so I did feel a little bit like a freak, even though like actually in reality, compared to other female bodybuilders, I'm not that big, but definitely my look does draw attention. It does draw attention here in Las Vegas too, but I feel like it's a really curious and interested type of attention. Like I really rarely feel negative attention. Every once in a while, I mean, I do get some remarks, but for the most part, like people are curious and they want to like flex at me or like be like, oh, like I see you, and I my person like I like that. I that gives me a lot of energy. So, and also confirmation that what I'm doing is right and working. So, like, I'm all about it. Like, look all you want.
Hey, yeah, I've always been on the same page of if you got it, flaunt it, basically. So it's, that really does go along with it. But just this whole, we talked about it a little bit, but the whole mentality that you need to have to compete in this sport, you need to be so strong mentally, even 100 times more strong than anything physically. But what has this journey been like for you mentally? Because so many people will never notice that mental change unless they really know you. They'll just notice the physical changes, and that's something that I think needs to be brought up more. Is just how much of a mental sport this is, and how much you can change mentally from doing it.
I mean, the the whole thing is mental, right? Because you want to be the best that you can, but in the end, it is literally just you. It is you in your kitchen. It is you at the gym. It is you training as hard as you can. It is you choosing to stick to your diet or not. It is you deciding to go out and socialize and get less sleep than you need, and so those those moments are when you grow, right? When you tell yourself no, when you push yourself harder, but also to understand your body and yourself enough to know when you need a little break. When do you need to deload? When do you need to pull back? Are you communicating everything the best you can to your coach so that they can offer a refeed if needed? All of these things. And during this prep that I had, when I started to notice real changes in my personality because of the things that I was on, that was a big marker for me. I'm a very like open and bubbly person. I don't know, just like smiling a lot in my personal life, and I started to see myself not doing that. And that was a big alarm bell for me. And so, and my friends did notice that. And I thought, um, whatever's going on, me being shitty is not worth it. That's not me. So that was an area of major growth as well. Like, is having a perfect physique worth me being not a good person? No, it's not. So taking a step back, unraveling those layers, and working through that, getting off everything, getting myself and my mind right again means that in the future, when I do prep again, I'm armed with all of this new information and knowledge and mental strength and fortitude that I didn't have before. Right?
It's a learning experience, and a part of that learning experience comes along with coaching as well. I love to bring up coaches because I've heard so many horror stories about coaches where, it seems like, 80% of them, it's just like sifting through, a debris field. You're going to find some good things, some bad things. But with coaching, especially, I find that it's a lot harder to have a good coach than, a bad coach. But in your own opinion and personal experience, what makes a coach a good coach? Because I try to, bring that out to the people to look at these things maybe in their coaches to determine whether or not they should be a coach. Because like I said, there's so many more bad coaches, I think, than good coaches. But in your own personal experience, what makes a coach a good coach?
I mean, I'm going to put communication on the top of the list. How do they communicate with you is really important, and are they there are they there when things start to unravel? Because that's like when it's needed. Okay, yeah, you have your weekly check-in. Work they're obviously going to answer the check-in. That's their time to shine. But are they there when the things in your life are playing against you? That's really important. And also, I think it's really important to look at um, some people, some coaches, some people in life uh, don't really know what they don't know. And so, unfortunately, that breeds a lot of misinformation and potentially danger. It's very dangerous. And so, to work with somebody that realizes they do not have all the answers, actually, I think is more important, because then they either do, and then do they have a network of people that they are gathering information from, that they can work through if something does come up with their client, their athlete, that is unexpected. Um, that is extremely important, and that's really what I've learned. And I see a lot of coaches saying a lot of things on social media that I have to put a lot of, my brain's like making a bunch of big question marks. I'm like, are you sure about that? And so, but when I was started all this, I really didn't know what to look for, and I think that's true for a lot of people. They don't know yet. You have to kind of, unfortunately, make some mistakes and maybe work with some people that aren't quite aligned with you, and unfortunately, till you find the right fit, right?
Well, and you brought up social media, and that's just such a huge part. I mean, your platform as well, along with other people. But when it comes to being, someone on social media, what is your favorite part about it, and what is your least favorite part about social media?
Um, Yeah, so it depends on the platform, and I use different platforms for different things, to display different kinds of content, and I really like using Instagram stories, and I like how that connects me more personally with people. Honestly, that's probably my favorite way to display things, because I just feel like it's more real, and I can show a little bit more of myself. And I think putting myself out there in a way that can be criticized, I do struggle with that. So, like, I have some friends who are influencers, and they have like great TikTok followings and stuff. And, part of me aspires to do that as well. But then, maybe I do put something out and it gets some negative feedback. And I'm not gonna lie, I hate that. I absolutely hate that. I understand that it can't always be a positive space, but I don't like that. I just want to showcase what I'm doing, and either you like it or you don't say anything. But that's just not also reality. Like, that's just not the world we live in. And so that I just struggle with that, I guess. And I struggle with I think all of us that are working on ourselves, our physiques, no matter how hard you try to only compare yourself to yourself, it is difficult not to compare yourself to others. So I do have to constantly, sometimes I take social media breaks, I'll take it off. I won't check it for a day or two. And that is truly for my mental health because I have to like just realize I'm in my own lane and I'm competing with myself. But it's difficult, of course, when my feed is filled with beautiful, perfect physiques. That's not a normal feed to see. Most people see regular bodies all the time. I'm only seeing the top of the top of the top.
It depresses me like no other to go through my timeline as well because I follow all the people that I have on, and yeah, it is very. If I ever feel too good about myself, I'll just scroll down my feed and it'll last about 5 seconds, and I'll be like, "Oh, okay, you know."
All right, I'm normal.
Exactly, which is, I mean, it's a nice way to humble a person, I guess, when it comes down to it. But I mean, as you can tell, sleep is something that I struggle with myself. Just look at these eyes. You told me that you struggle with it as well. How do you deal with sleep now? Is it gotten better for you, or are you still someone like me who still struggles with it a lot?
I struggle with it sometimes. It depends on what's going on in my life. Certainly, if I am more stressed out, I really struggle with sleep. I really try to get 8 hours, and I'm usually pretty on that. If I could get 9 or 10, that would be the dream, but that's really usually not happening. But I really do try to prioritize sleep. It is the number one best tool for recovery, and it really makes a difference. And I know what I'm training the next day, so I know like I really need to get my solid sleep tonight. Otherwise, it's going to be an issue. Like, otherwise, I can't deadlift 315 pounds. Like, I know if I have a lack of recovery, like, I just can't perform. And if the whole point of this is to perform and get stronger, then I have to be on that. So I do a lot to make sure I set myself up for success with that. I've got lots of great pillows. I make sure my room is pretty dark and nice and cool. And but I do get caught scrolling and doing the norm too. So I'm not perfect. It's definitely progress over perfection in all of these things, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, everyone always has that one lift that they've done in the gym where they just look at themselves and they're like, I can't believe I did this. It's their one moment where you're just like, oh my God, this is incredible. What was that one lift for you? Because I can tell you myself, it was when I did, what was it? I think it was like 275 on bench one time in college, and I just got up off of it and I was like, oh my God, did I really do that? But have you had that moment yet? And if you did, what was it?
Well, I've had it sort of in a period of time. So I would say the way that I'm training right now is just like way different than I have actually trained prior. And so about 2 months ago, I would say I started to like really hit heavier lifts. My deadlift just started going up, my bench started going up, and my squat started going up. And just the way that we were implementing those lifts. And so now what I'm realizing is so from about 2 months ago to now, like I'm just really making a lot of progress quickly. Everything's getting heavier and feeling it's it's happening with the right progression, with the right speed, and it's just working, right? So um that is like attributed to being in good health. And it's attributed to the consistency, like now I've been consistent in what I've been doing for long enough that my body's responding really well. And so now I kind of have this realization that like nothing is off the table. Like any as strong as I could possibly be is available to me. And so I wouldn't say it was like just one lift, but there was just this moment where like everything started working. And I'm like texting my coach, like, holy shit, like, okay, I'm benching 135 with ease. Now I'm benching 155 with ease. Now on the 165 with ease. Okay. He's like, well, that means 205 is like right around the corner. Okay, I'm deadlifting 270 or 245. That was previously the heaviest I could ever deadlift. Well, now I'm deadlifting 315. Okay, he's like, well, we're going to be hitting the 400 soon. Like within 6 months, it's reasonable. I'm like, okay, well, now I realize that my understanding of progress was just like not really an understanding before. Now it's just about being as consistent as I possibly can in the outside, because then, like, the sky is the limit in the gym. I don't know what the limit is. There is none, I don't think.
I mean, yeah, some of these people I've talked to that have been doing this for 20 years, yeah, they still are finding new maxes and they're doing new different things. So really, yeah, the sky really is the limit. But I saw in one of your posts that you were helping train someone. How long have you been doing that?
Yeah, so I started training people in after my first competition, so September of 2022. And I did all that at Big Iron Gym in Seattle. And so I worked there right up until I left for Las Vegas. So I haven't been doing any in person training in Las Vegas since I've been here. I'm still kind of establishing myself and who I am and what I want to do, getting people's interest in just putting out there the content that I want people to see so that, to attract the right people. But yeah, I started training people back then and got certified and just kind of worked my way up in that gym till I was the head trainer there. And then, yeah, so I had the most clients for a while and it was a lot. It's a lot. It's actually a lot more physically taxing than you would realize to train a lot of people.
Well, and you become a therapist too. Like, let's be completely honest, where it's you might as well just go back to school and get your degree in it because like you're going to be using it all the time. That's one thing that shocked me the most when I really started to dive into. Like, I like to ask people like, "Oh, what's your favorite thing and least favorite about being a trainer?" And that's normally some of the responses that I get. But if someone were to walk up to you and say, Marilyn, we made the decision. You could change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding. Everyone would go along with it. Would be one thing that you'd like to see change. And if it's more than one, you can do more than one.
What would I like to see changed in bodybuilding? Oh man. um, I wish that there was a little bit more, some kind of, um, a little bit clearer way, like when you get started with how to find like the right coach for you. Because I think a lot of people get hooked on like a trendy idea, and some coaching companies, whatever groups, they kind of like um, poach, they kind of like leech on those kind of people that don't really understand. And so I wish there was something a little bit more like standardized, I guess, with how that should look. Because it's okay to be a novice. So if there was something a little bit more standardized, I think that would be incredible. Now, will that happen? Probably not. you know, Unfortunately, there's always going to be people with really big, fancy Instagram accounts that look like they know what they're doing that just, and frankly, don't.
That is the majority of them, if I'm being completely honest. And that's just from the outside perspective, doing this for as long as I have. That's something that I've come to find. So everyone take it with a grain of salt. Make sure you definitely do your research on people before you commit. Because yeah, this is a story that she just told that I've heard dozens of times on this podcast. So it's yeah, you do your research and ask questions too. Some people just jump right into things without even asking questions, and then stuff happens. So that's probably my best piece of advice on that as well. But just with this whole sport and lifestyle, there's going to be some people that have a hard time looking past just the way that you look and getting to know you as a real person. Has that something that you've struggled with? Because when you are something that's not of the normal, a lot of times, like let's say if you were even like 6.5 feet tall, some people might not. Some people might have a hard time, like getting past that and getting to know the real. But if you're really muscular, that's another one too. Have you found that to be the case? And how do you deal with the fact that like some people just won't be able to look past the way that you look and really try to like find the deep down the person inside you?
Yeah, I definitely noticed that. But I have a the the real ones make themselves known. You know, they always do. And then I find camaraderie with other female bodybuilders. So the I have friendships there that are growing because we have a an understanding of each other. Even male bodybuilders too. You know, they see me and there's more of a feeling of respect rather than like being fetishized, for example, which is very much a part of the this. Which nothing wrong with that, but of course I do want the people that are close to me to know who I am.
Well, and there's nothing
Um,
wrong with it, but some people just don't know when to stop, or they take it to a certain, just like with anything, they take it to an extreme where it's just like, okay, this is not. I agree, like a little bit of it, and just it's fine in general, but like I have seen so many times stuff gets taken way too far, and you're just like, you guys got to know your boundaries.
yes.
That's I and she made a post. Well, I was gonna ask you off the record about that, but like you made a post about it too, like today, where like if you talking about like people that support you, if like they aren't willing to, and I agree with that, you know, 1,000,000% too. So I get that as well. So the moment you saw it, I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to ask her about that because I feel that all the time too, where it's like some people they just, and it's always one or two people that tend to ruin it for everyone else too. So I've seen that happen so many times. So I just need to bring that out to people. It's like they're human beings just like everyone else. Treat them like human beings. Don't treat them like they're objects, which, I mean, if you want to really have an object, you can go get a doll or something like that, I guess, or whatever. But, you know, then you can really treat it like an, but it's like a lot of people just don't understand the person behind, just like with a lot of other athletes too, where especially if you're a big NFL fan like me, I sometimes forget that these guys are, you know, just human beings deep down as well. So it's something that I think we as a society as well really need to get into. But when we do have you on in a year, because I love to talk to you in a year just to catch up with you, where'd you like to be at? You said you might be competing in shows later next year. Is there a time period that you're working at where like if you'll know if you'll be competing at all next year, or you just playing it by ear and seeing what happens?
Well, I do have sort of an overview of what 2024 will look like. So right now I'm actually preparing for a Spartan race in March. But during everything that I'm doing with my training works for the entire year, and it will evolve as the different competitions come up. But I want to do a Spartan race in March, and then about 12 weeks later, I'm going to do my first powerlifting meet. And then, depending on what I look like at that time, I may diet into a show, or that might also be a good time to do another push phase. In which case, then I would maybe do that for 12 weeks or so, then hold it for a bit, and then diet into a show, which might put me very much at the end of 2024 or early 2025. So we'll see, but that's my tentative timeline. And just with the training style that I'm doing, I'm just getting stronger and I'm getting more athletic. So we'll see what it comes out, what I look like, and we'll be able to see because I'll have leaned out a little bit, and so we'll know. Okay, we need still more glutes, more whatever, more lats. But maybe but maybe I'll look okay, and we can go right into it. I don't know yet.
Well, this is gonna sound really dumb, but I always get Tough Mudders, Spartan races, and Ironmans confused. So what is a Spartan race?
So they have like different lengths. You could do a 5K, 10K, and there's some other ones, but I wouldn't do those. And then they have like 25 obstacles in between them. I think they're a lot like a Tough Mudder. But I just wanted to give myself a more athletic challenge to start the year off, because I do enjoy that explosive movement. And really, people think that, well, okay, so in my larger goal, which is to get old and still be able to function and move my body well, um, but just your sort of like traditional bodybuilding style doesn't fully fit in with that. I don't want to get so big, so stuck and immobile that I also struggle. So it's really important to me to remain athletic, and I noticed myself losing athleticism. So this is just a different kind of race, a different kind of sport to try and like to have fun with. I don't care about how I place. Just want to train in an athletic way, get that explosiveness up, and be kind of multifaceted athlete as I evolve.
Absolutely. And I forgot to ask you this as soon as I heard it because it was fascinating to me because, like I told you, I interviewed musicians for like the first 100 or so guests. So you majored in music. Did you do an instrument or what did you do with music?
So I did voice actually, and so I was a singer, and all of my 20s I was in bands and living that lifestyle.
That's
and
where the
so
drinking came in, everyone.
that's came in, and so unfortunately, like it just by my late 20s I was just pretty, pretty I was pretty ran over. And so I knew I needed to make a lot of changes, and but I loved those years in some different ways, and I got a lot out of it, and I loved to sing at that time. It brought me a lot of joy, but now this direction is bringing me more, if not the same, if not more joy than that did, because it's there's well, I'm not hungover. That's a big part of it. I'm not hungover every day.
Just remember, everyone, you're not hungover if you just keep drinking.
I used to tell myself that
Yeah.
too.
No, I went on not like a tour, but I did like a tour thing with a band that I was covering for 3 weeks. And after that, I remember just thinking to myself, like, how are these guys still alive? First of all, after doing this for years, it's one of those things where you don't realize just how extreme it is until I tell people, like, if you really just try it at least. And then a lot of times after some of those shows, I'd just be afterwards and I'd be like, okay, there's no way that these guys can still stay up and like party. And then next thing you know, it's 4 a.m. and you're like, how did this happen? So yeah,
But they are, and I did, and you
I have
you
nothing against those people too. It's like, I wish I could have that type of stamina, but it's like, yeah,
but actually they don't.
I want,
They
I
don't
you
feel
said
good.
it. I didn't want to put that out there because I know deep down they didn't. I wanted to keep the myth alive for them. But now that you admit it, I was like, no, of course they don't. But like, I just want
The
to be
thing
that guy.
is, we will all, it is human nature. We will lie to ourselves to do the thing that we want to do, right? And I lied to myself for many, many years. And even though I found enjoyment in doing music, uh, the lifestyle that I was living was very unhealthy for me, and it brought a lot of people into my life that were also unhealthy, and it just attracted that. And yeah, now I just am a little older and a little wiser, and on a path that feels much clearer and better, healthier for me.
Are you someone that tends to go really all in on stuff? Because like you said, like with the being in the bands and now you're in bodybuilding, which is really going all in on the health thing. Are you a person that just goes hardcore? Because I'm like that myself.
Yes, to a fault.
I can, yeah, there are more stories that I could tell you. And I honestly couldn't think of a better way to end the podcast than that, everyone, because almost every guest that I've had on really does take things to an extreme, and I do myself. So that's another reason why I understand them a little bit. Like I said, I've never actually stepped on the stage, so I don't really understand that part because I don't have that mental toughness that they have to look at a hot dog or a hamburger and not eat it, which is something that I'm working on currently. But Marilyn, I cannot thank you enough for coming on and sharing your journey with us. I mean, it was an absolute delight to talk to you and have you on.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to chat with you. I really enjoyed this. Thanks.
I appreciate that. Well, everyone, go and check out our Instagram page. I'll leave a link down below. I'll leave a link for all our other stuff too. Go and check that out. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.